Kia ora koutou, Marky here, and I'm doing it again. I'm pointing the camera at the computer screen. So if that jazzy effect that it gives you, or the horror, the amount of dust on my screen, it's terrible, isn't it? Causes you distress or triggers a migraine or epilepsy or anything like that, don't watch. Just listen to my dulcet tones. You won't miss anything. Just giving you something to look at rather than my ugly chops. So this is a very meta video. It's a follow-up to a video I did back along, and I'll put a link in the description box to that video, where I was talking about a horrible man called Stephan Stearns. I'm just going to pause the video for a second for reasons that will become apparent shortly. So Stephan Stearns, if you don't know, he murdered his I don't know if you call her stepdaughter. I think you could, or maybe ex-stepdaughter or estranged stepdaughter, or it was a confusing kind of series of relationships, and a complex case really, but very nasty murder, which was the culmination of years of CSA. And I did a video because I follow a lot of true crime, and my interest in true crime is the twofold really. I'm interested in the psychology of the perpetrators, and that dovetails with some of my professional work, which is in the forensic area, and I'm also interested in the detection of deception. So that's where I kind of, I'm not a gore, what is it, a gore whore as they call it. I'm not particularly into it from that point of view. I mean, I do like a good horror film, but I don't actually like slashers and things like that. I prefer kind of, atmospheric horror. I like kind of good old gothic horror. I don't like slashers at all, really. They don't do anything for me. So that's my interest, and it's kind of a bit of a guilty pleasure, I suppose. And I always feel a bit guilty about making content on it as well, because it seems a little bit ghoulish, really, to because this is real people with real lives and stuff like that. So I always end up kind of doing a long apology, which I won't. I'll keep it short in this one, but I will mention the victim's name, because we always talk about the perpetrator's name, and it's more important that we celebrate the lives of and commemorate the victim. So the victim was a 13-year-old girl called Madeline Soto. In this case. Now, I'm not going to say too much more about that, because I've done a video on it. Have a watch of that one, because this one won't really make much sense if you don't watch the previous one. I guess you could watch this one without watching the previous one, but it would be better if you watched the previous one. So the previous video, I was saying, I was watching videos. There's a lot of material that's been made public about this guy. So his calls from jail to his parents, and he phones them very regularly, have all been made public. The state, I think it's the state of Florida, they seem to just do this. It seems to be their policy. So there's lots of people like, and I'll mention another channel that I recommend as well, which is Grizzly True Crime. And I've been following mainly her coverage, where she's been making public his phone calls to his parents. And my previous video, I was saying I get taken in by this guy and end up feeling sorry for him, and it's kind of unusual because he's done such horrible things, and he is such a horrible person. He's I think people who aren't horrible people can do horrible things. There's a complex issue. We won't get into that here. But he is a horrible person who's done horrible things. But when I listen to him talking to his parents, listen to these phone calls, he seems like such a little sausage, and I end up kind of, feeling sorry for him, and not having the normal feelings that I would have to somebody that's done, something as heinous as he has done. So I did the video which was a kind of me expressing my confusion, but I've resolved it. I've worked out what it is. It's a simple thing. It's not a complex thing, but it kind of the penny dropped in it, and it all makes sense. And it's thanks in part to these two channels. So how do these channels fit in? So first of all, never a truer word. So that's this guy, Jack Fox. Now, This is a channel I've only recently discovered and I've really been enjoying. As some of you may know from previous videos, I am a student of statement analysis, which is a process by which you can identify deception based on the words that people use. So you use it from either if somebody writes something, you can analyze what they've written, or if somebody says something, you can transcribe it or record the words and then do statement analysis based on what they say. Now there's a couple of other video YouTube channels that also cover statement analysis, but this guy Jack Fox from Never a Truer Word, he doesn't call what he does statement analysis, he calls it statement investigation. And I'd be interested to know a bit more about him and what he does outside of YouTube, but he talks about working with clients and I think law enforcement. So he's not claiming to do statement analysis, he's calling it something different. And now I don't know whether this is a term that he's created himself to describe what he does. He's certainly using some aspects of statement analysis as I would know it. So I trained with Mark McClish, who's a lovely guy, who's is he yeah, FBI, I think, or was FBI. But Jack Fox, he's doing something different, but he's very good. I've binge watched a lot of his videos, and he talks an awful lot of sense. I think his analysis is very good. I think a lot of it is kind of common sense, but then statement analysis, a lot of it is common sense anyway. So check out his channel if you're interested in statement analysis and deception detection. He's a very good presenter as well, and he's enjoyable to listen to. There's a nice balance of humor, and it's a really good channel. So what he's done is so he needs something to look at or something to read. So what he's done is he's gone to another channel. And this is these people you can see here, Lauren and Dr. John, not Dr. John, that's the musician. They have a channel, and again, I haven't long since, it's not long since I discovered their channel, which is also very good, which is what I also want to recommend. And I'll put links to all these things in the description below. It may not be for a little while. Which is called Hidden True Crime, and it's a funny name, isn't it? Because I always end up forgetting what the channel name is. So it's interesting, it's hidden because it gets hidden from me. So he is now I can't remember whether he's a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So I think he's a psychologist, and I think they're a couple. And I think Lauren, I think she's a journalist by profession. So they run their channel as a double act. So Dr. John does a lot of really good analysis. He seems to be a really nice guy. He's very compassionate. He talks sense. His analysis is very good. And I think Lauren, she employs some of her skills with interviewing, because sometimes they have guests on. Sometimes I think they'll look at a piece of footage, and sometimes they'll have a guest, or sometimes they'll comment on something that's gone on. So between the two of them, they've got kind of complementary skills, and they are talking to Chris and Debbie Stern. Stearns, sorry, it's got an S on the end of it. Stephan Stern's parents, and they're doing an interview. So I haven't actually watched the original, the full length on the Hidden True Crime channel, but I've watched Jack Fox do his analysis of what Chris and Debbie have said during the interview. So they're not analysing the questioners, they're not analysing Laurel and Dr. John, but they are analysing Chris and Debbie. And they're asking Chris and Debbie, a lot about, what they think of their son and their relationship with their son, and, all the stuff that you'd expect them to ask, really. And watching this, so I'm getting the benefit really of two channels and three people's worth of analysis and investigation and interviewing. the penny dropped. And this is you know, and it's, like I say, it's not kind of rocket science really. It's kind of you know, this was, you know, when something's on the tip of your tongue, you almost know something, but you can't quite get there, and then you go, right, okay. Stephan Stearns has, in my opinion, developed the persona of a cute little boy. And it has worked wonders in his ability to manipulate his parents, and is still working wonders in his ability to manipulate his parents, which as evidenced in the phone calls and as evidence in this interview. So in this interview, they kind of say, you know, they kind of imply that, you know, they're not sure if they even like him, but they're always jump when he asks for anything. And that's one of the things that's been commented on a lot, that, you know, his dad is always sending him money to jail, and he's got these particular sweets that he likes, or lollies as they say in New Zealand, candy as they say in America, and his dad makes sure that he doesn't run out of all this stuff. And if he wants a book on origami, his dad sends it straight away. And so they jump to his beck and call, despite the fact that he's done something, you know, truly heinous, which he's actually now pleaded guilty to. I say pleaded. Some people say pled, but I think it's pleaded. But tell me if I'm wrong. He is, and that's where he's it got me hooked, and that's why it got me kind of feeling sorry for him. And now, obviously, I think some people are more susceptible to some forms of manipulation than others. But I think the lost, sad little boy is something that I must be particularly vulnerable to, and it opens my heart and my empathy, and that's exactly what he's done. And they talk about in this interview how he used to lie on behalf of his friends, because his parents were quite generous and kind and would step in and try and help people. So he would sometimes tell them that his friends had particular problems, which his parents would go about trying to address, and they were completely made up. And when they ask him, you know, what, just in a nutshell, really, to kind of paraphrase, they ask him, you know, what's the good sides of Stephan Stearns, and they give lots of examples of where he's sort of supposedly helped people or animals, but what he's actually done, when you break it down, and Jack Fox has done a great job of this, is he's basically identified animals and people who are in need, and manipulated other people into helping them. So if he's, and I've done other videos on some of the psychology around this. So I've done a video on something called the drama triangle, or the Cartman triangle, which is about how people use different manipulative roles, including the victim role. So Stephan Stearns would very much be part of the victim role. Now, what's interesting is he doesn't just use this role himself; he does it kind of vicariously. So not only does he present as the sad lost little boy that needs something, is he will find an injured animal that's, you know, is they, oh look, you know, so it's effectively it's like you're saying, oh look, mummy, you know, I brought this injured bird home, you know, he's poorly, he needs mending, and also he does that for friends, and sometimes in quite spurious situations. So he's so good at kind of playing victim that he doesn't just do it for himself, he does it by proxy. So it's interesting. So people talk about what they used to call Munchausen's, which they now call factitious disorder, and factitious disorder or Munchausen's by proxy. And that's often the case where it's kind of similar. I think it's different, but it's similar in that. So somebody with that condition, somebody with Munchausen's might, or a factitious disorder, I'm using both terms because factitious disorder is the correct sort of modern, you know, current term, but most people still think of it as, and use the term Munchausen's. It's a good example of that would be somebody who feigns illness to get attention. And by proxy is where they would actually, often in some cases, people have actually induced illness into their children, for example, by poisoning them, so that the children get lots of medical attention, and they thrive on the attention, one step removed, but they still get the attention even though it's through the child. So it's like he's a victim. He plays very much victim role, and victim by proxy, which is really, really interesting. And he does it in this sweet little boy. And they're kind of saying, I mean, they don't use words. They use some complimentary words about him, and I can't remember exactly what they said. This is the parents now I'm talking about. It wasn't like lovable and adorable, but it was kind of qualities like that. They couldn't actually list anything that he'd wholeheartedly they couldn't list any actual positive qualities about him that didn't have kind of gaps and holes in them. But they did say words to the effect of adorable and lovable. And yes, he can feign this adorable, lovable, sweet little boy. And it's interesting, everyone talks about how childish he is. That's, Grizzly often comments on that. She calls him a boy man or a child man or something like that. And, I think that's an element. I think he's probably got autism. He's definitely a nerd. He's into a lot of nerdy things, nothing wrong with that, and there isn't a correlation between people that do these kind of highness things and autism or nerdiness. But I think there's a connection there. So some of his interests, and I've done a video on how sometimes people with autism can be more into quite, what might be perceived as more childlike or childish things. It's controversial, so I won't get into that too much here. But one of the comments that frequently comes up, descriptors of Stephan Stern's, is that he is childish. And I think a big element of that childishness is his cultivated manipulative persona of being the lost little boy. Now, how much of this is contrived and deliberate and constructed, and how much of this is genuine or unconscious, or is just evolved or just part of who he is? Difficult to say. Probably 50-50. I think certainly, just in my opinion, I think he's very conscious of his manipulation that he does on people, but I suspect also it's become such an ingrained behavior that he probably does it even without thinking or without realizing. So I think there are times when he applies effort to it, but lots of times where it's just effortless. It's just how he rocks. So what's happened is he's pleaded, I think it's pleaded, not pled, guilty. He did this terrible apology, which Jack Fox also did an analysis of, and a few other people that I follow have done some really good analyses of his apology, which is a kind of one of those non-apology apologies. It's a statement he asked to read in court. He was facing the death penalty, but I think by pleading not guilty, he's got himself off that hook. Although he did say in some conversations that he'd rather face a death penalty than have life in prison, because he's got like a multiple life sentence. So I think it's probably one of these cases where people plead guilty, but they say they didn't do it. I strongly suspect that actually if you spoke to him, he would still deny doing it. But he pleaded guilty. And in my professional experience, I've come across a lot of people who plead guilty to offences but then deny them. So they say, well, I pleaded guilty because my lawyer said that was a good idea, or to get a lower sentence, or I wouldn't go to jail, or I wouldn't, it would turn out better for me if I pleaded guilty, but I didn't do it. Including and these are often cases with sexual offences, which I'm always very dubious of, because I think if you haven't committed a sexual offence and you're accused of committing a sexual offence, especially if it's towards children, then the likelihood is that, you would want to defend your reputation and your innocence, and you would never, plead guilty to something like that you haven't done. You'd rather go to jail, and then, try and appeal or what have you, than admit to something, admit to a sexual crime that you haven't committed. So I think that's what Stephan Stearns is doing. So so interesting. So you can. The other interesting thing is, because I study statement analysis and deception detection and that kind of thing, and I've listened to his interviews and stuff, and a lot of people have commented that he's a really bad liar and you can see right through him, but I can't. It's interesting. I've got a blind spot here. His method of manipulation, it just works brilliantly on me. So this is really useful information for me. It's something I need to be, I need to work on on this blind spot, because otherwise, I could be, taken for a mug by anyone that, has the same MO or the same persona. So yeah, Stephan. So what do you think? Is Stephan Stern? Does he play the lost little boy? And does he play the victim role, both directly and by proxy? I think he does. Let me know your thoughts. Rangi Marie.